When did you embarrass yourself in front of a stranger so you low-key just had to bury them in a desert? Alright, let me paint you a picture. It was a perfect Tuesday afternoon. I'd played hooky from work, the sun was out, and I was on the Santa Monica Pier, feeling like the main character in a movie about a guy who really has his life together. I had a fresh basket of those ridiculously overpriced garlic fries, and I was watching the waves. It was pure bliss. I saw this one seagull, perched on the railing. He wasn't like the other frantic, screeching ones. He was majestic. He looked at me, I looked at him. There was a silent understanding. I decided, in a moment of profound connection with nature, to offer him a single, perfect fry. A gift from one king to another. I held it out. He looked at the fry, then at me. I swear he nodded. I felt like a Disney princess. This was it. This was my moment of serene communion with the animal kingdom. Then he attacked. He didn't just take the fry. He dive-bombed me with the fury of a pterodactyl, talons out, beak snapping. I shrieked, a high-pitched, embarrassing sound I didn't know my body could produce. I stumbled backward, tripped over my own feet, and went down hard. The entire basket of fries exploded all over my chest, and a cascade of garlic aioli splattered across my face. The seagull, now joined by its entire extended family, descended upon my corpse-like body and began feasting on my shame. And that's when I heard it. Laughter. Not a chuckle. Not a snicker. It was a full-throated, gut-busting, tears streaming down his face roar of laughter. I looked up, vision blurred by aioli and humiliation, to see a guy in a bright Hawaiian shirt. He was pointing. He had his phone out, recording the whole pathetic spectacle. The world went silent. The sound of the gulls faded. The waves stopped crashing. The only thing in the universe was this man's hyena-like cackle and the red recording light on his phone. My brain, which moments before was filled with seaside zen, was now a cold, quiet server room running a single, silent program. This footage can never see the light of day. This witness is a loose end. I got up, brushed the fries off my shirt, and walked over to him with a calm I did not feel. That was pretty funny, huh? I said, smiling. He was still wiping tears from his eyes. Oh man, I'm sorry, but the way you just... You'd be surprised how quickly a person stops laughing when you grab them in a textbook perfect chokehold and whisper, "We're going for a drive." 2 hours later, we were deep in the Mojave Desert where the hole was already waiting. It was a nice, respectable 6-foot deep hole. I believe in doing a job right. He was sitting on the ground, hands zip-tied, the laughter long gone, replaced by a terrified, blubbering mess. Please, man, I'll delete it. I'll throw my phone in the hole with me. I'll never tell anyone, I swear. I'll move to another country. He pleaded, snot and tears carving paths through the dust on his face. I paused, leaning on the shovel, and looked at him. I almost felt bad. Almost. Look, I need you to understand this isn't personal, I explained, my voice reasonable. It's just risk management. You see, a memory is just data. Your brain is a server, and your mouth is a security risk. I can't be sure you won't tell your wife, or your therapist, or mumble it in your sleep. I can't spend the rest of my life wondering if today's the day Seagull Man goes viral. I have a reputation. Not a great one, but it's mine. He just stared at me, his hope draining away. I have to tie up loose ends, I said with a shrug, picking up the shovel. It's just what you do. The drive back was much more peaceful. The sunset was beautiful. TLDR, I tried to have a moment with a seagull. It humiliated me in front of a tourist, so I drove him to the desert and permanently deleted his video and his ability to ever tell anyone about it. Teachers have read it. What was the moment you realized you'd had enough and went full savage on your class? Alright, settle in, class, because I'm about to drop a lesson plan you won't find in the curriculum. I taught high school English for 10 years, and I loved it. I lived for the spark in a kid's eye when they finally got Shakespeare. But with all my years never could have prepared me for that day, prepared me for the day period 4 went full-on Lord of the Flies. The unit was Macbeth. The Scottish play. My magnum opus. I had it all, moody lighting, a cauldron, a prop, mostly, and a genuine, custom-forged, battle-ready replica of Macbeth's sword I kept under my desk. It was a gift from a historical society, and honestly, it was the only thing that brought me joy some days. My students? Let's just say they weren't exactly the Royal Shakespeare Company. They thought Lady Macbeth was a brand of eyeshadow and that the Three Witches were a cancelled girl group. The ringleader of this apathy circus was a kid named Braden. He sat in the back, hood up, radiating the kind of existential boredom that could suck the life out of a fire alarm. The day it all went down, I was giving my big soliloquy lecture. Is this a dagger which I see before me? I was giving it my all, passion, drama, the works. I turned to the class, expecting, if not applause, at least a pulse. Braden looks up from his phone, a dead-eyed stare, and says, "Ms. A, is this gonna be on the test? 'Cause this is mad boring." No cap. A few of his disciples snickered. That was it. The final straw. I looked at my desk thinking of my sword that could end Braden with a single blow to his jugular. But I didn't exactly want to end up life in prison over one bad year of students. So I decided to handle it with words rather than blades. But before I could deliver a verbal smackdown that would have made Shakespeare weep, something shifted. The air got thick. Braden stood up, and he wasn't holding a phone anymore. He was holding his pencil. He'd sharpened it down to a wickedly fine point. You know, he said, his voice chillingly calm, Macbeth killed the king to get what he wanted. Maybe we should too. My blood ran cold. He took a step forward. Then another student, Chloe, stood up, a protractor held like a shuriken. Then Kevin, with a compass, its metal needle glinting. All around the room, my 30 students rose in unison, their faces blank, their eyes fixed on me. They were an army of disaffected teens, armed with any sharp object they could find and a thirst for blood. It was a full-on student uprising. "Brayden, sit down," I said, my voice betraying a slight tremor. He just smiled. "The Thane have caught our lives, but we're about to cancel him." They started to advance, a slow, shuffling wave of sharpened graphite and safety scissors. The sound of 30 pairs of sneakers scuffing the linoleum was deafening. This was it. I thought. Maybe I could get to my sword to defend myself, but even then could I win against 30 bloodthirsty prepubescent teens? I had to do something, so I ran to my desk, my fingers closing around the cold, familiar leather of the hilt. With a swing that echoed in the sudden silence, I drew the sword. It was 4 feet of sharpened high-carbon steel, and it hummed in my hand like a live wire. The students all lunged at me in unison. Time seemed to slow to a halt as I held my last stand. I was a blur of steel and tweed. Scissors and pencils pierced my skin from all angles. One pencil flew past my ear, embedding itself in the hang-in-there. Kitty poster on the wall. It was chaos. The school janitor, hearing the commotion outside, tried to rush in to mediate the storm, but he was immediately impaled by a makeshift spear some kids had made from a screwdriver duct taped onto a table leg. After what felt like hours of chopping up evil school kids, all that was left was a pile of bodies. I was just about ready to pass out from bleeding. Then I saw standing above the bodies of his fallen soldiers. Brayden, seeing his army defeated, let out a war cry and charged, leaping onto a desk for a high ground advantage. He lunged at me, pencil aimed for my throat. I met his charge with a move I'd only ever practiced on watermelons in my backyard. A clean, upward slash. His pencil shattered. His eyes went wide with a terror that, I admit, was deeply satisfying. He tumbled backward into a heap of his fallen comrades. The fight was over. The class was a wreck of overturned desks, scattered papers, and lifeless teenagers. I stood there, panting, sword held at the ready. Silence. The only sound was the faint buzzing of the fluorescent lights. I passed out from bleeding after the adrenaline wore off. Next thing I knew, I was in a hospital bed. I was questioned by police and doctors about what transpired in that classroom that day, but I knew I couldn't tell the truth. I told them I couldn't really remember anything about anything. I was written up as a horrible case of amnesia from hypovolemic shock. TLDR, I sliced up a class full of evil teens. I'd rather it be them than me. When did you finally stand up to your toxic boss? I worked at the kind of retail store that exists solely to grind the souls of minimum wage workers into mulch for quarterly reports, the place where dreams go to die next to the clearance bin. Our boss, Spencer, was the worst thing to happen to capitalism since the invention of the upcharge. He'd dock your pay for being 5 minutes late, monitor bathroom breaks like a prison warden, and once made an employee cry because their shoelaces weren't brand aligned. This man was a tyrant in a polyester suit. Every day was a new humiliation, impossible quotas that lead to threats about how replaceable we all were once we didn't meet them. The only thing keeping us going was the shared fantasy of seeing him get run over by a shipment of defective toasters. Then, one Tuesday, he really went for it. He called an all-hands meeting in the back room just to berate us for not smiling with our eyes. And whatever other stupid complaint he had about us. The final straw snapped when he accused Marissa of subversive stacking because she put the cereal boxes in a straight line instead of a pyramid. Something inside me just broke. I stood up, voice trembling but clear. "You know what, Spencer? Maybe if you spent less time inventing new ways to torture us, and more time actually working, our sales wouldn't be so awful. You treat us like garbage, but without us, you're just a sad man yelling at boxes of Pop-Tarts." The room went silent, then erupted in applause. Marissa started a slow clap. People around slowly joined her. Greg from electronics was openly weeping with joy. Spencer went beet red. He threatened to call corporate and get us all fired. "You wouldn't fire us." I confidently called his worthless bluff. "You are nothing without us and you know it." Wild-eyed, he grabbed a nearby mop and lunged at me, a mistake he would probably regret if he wasn't already dead. Before he came too close to me, I already had revealed my modified Mossberg 590 that I always carry with me in case of emergencies. One moment he was charging towards me. The next he was just a pair of legs that fell down limp. We all stared, frozen, then as one, moved into action. Marissa locked the door. Greg made sure that everyone was on the same page and swore them all to secrecy. Turns out, everyone had been planning for a day like this. We wrapped Spencer and all his pieces in shrink wrap, stuffed him in a pallet labeled "Returns, Do Not Open," and drove him out to the loading dock after hours. Trevor forged a resignation letter, Marissa posted a photo of Spencer sipping cocktails in Bali on his Facebook, and we wiped down every surface. The next day we all came into work like any other day. I was nominated by the team as the new manager because of my role in Spencer's demise. I decided that I was going to take on the task of leadership head on. Fast forward a month. Sales had nearly tripled, employee morale skyrocketed. We instituted fair scheduling, quarterly bonuses, no employee harassment policy. I boosted salaries, threw pizza parties, and made sure everyone smiled for real. After 3 months of constant growth and success, corporate called a meeting with my team. I wondered if they might be curious about what happened to the old manager. But they never even asked about Spencer. They just wanted to learn about the strategies I was using to turn my store's sales and reputation around in such a short time. Well, I said, I just make sure that every employee and customer that walks in here has a reason to smile. They loved my ideals as a boss so much that they had me and my team traveling the country to every branch they had for employer training. They offered me a job as an executive, but I declined, saying I wouldn't be anywhere without my team. I made sure to stay humble so as to not give anybody a reason to come clean about what really happened to Spencer. After all was said and done, I was working the best retail job in the history of capitalism. They say that you miss every shot you don't take. Every once in a while I think about where I would be right now if I hadn't taken the shot that turned Spencer into a pile of meat. I would probably be miserable working for barely enough money to eat, let alone pay rent. But instead I built up a retail store to be the most successful in my state, providing enough income for me and my team to live comfortably and happily for the rest of our lives. TLDR, my nightmare boss finally pushed me too far. I stood up to him, the team helped make sure he'd never push anyone again, and we built the happiest, highest sales retail store in town. What's the craziest thing you saw a military chaplain do in combat? We had this chaplain on our FOB in Kandahar, a quiet Italian priest named Enrico. The guys just called him Father Rico. He was this small, bird-like man who looked like a strong gust of wind could send him tumbling back to Rome. He did all the usual chaplain stuff, held mass in a tent that was always 120 degrees, listened to confessions from guys who'd done things they'd never tell their wives, and handed out pocket Bibles like they were candy. He was a good man, but utterly unremarkable. Then the rumors started. A squad would come back from a nasty skirmish looking pale and shaken, but not for the usual reasons. They'd whisper stories about Father Rico just showing up in the middle of a firefight. We all knew chaplains aren't supposed to be anywhere near the front, let alone in the thick of it. The brass would have had an aneurysm. The stories were insane. One kid swore he saw an RPG heading straight for their Humvee, only for it to swerve at the last second and fly into the sky like a confused pigeon. The kid claimed he saw Father Rico standing on a nearby ridge, just watching. Another group from Delta Company said they were pinned down, taking heavy fire, when suddenly the enemy combatants just started screaming and dropping their weapons. When they were asked what they saw, they just mumbled something about a man in black and a terrible light. We all laughed it off. Combat stress is a hell of a drug. We figured the guys were seeing things, creating a guardian angel myth to cope. Then I saw it myself. We were on a patrol that went south faster than a toupee in a hurricane. Ambush. We were outnumbered, outgunned, and taking casualties. We were fighting for our lives, cornered in this dusty, half-destroyed compound. I was trying to return fire when I saw him. Father Rico. He wasn't on a ridge this time, he was walking through the open courtyard, right into the kill zone. He wasn't carrying a weapon. He wasn't even running. He was just strolling, hands clasped behind his back, like he was taking a pleasant walk through the Vatican gardens. Bullets were cracking the air all around him, but nothing touched him. It was like he was walking between the raindrops in a monsoon. The enemy fighters, who had been screaming bloody murder a second before, just stopped. They stared at him, their rifles lowered. Father Rico stopped in the middle of the courtyard, looked at one of the insurgents who had been peppering our position with a machine gun, and raised a single finger. He spoke, his voice not loud, but it cut through the silence like a razor. He said one word, repent. And the guy just inverted. I don't know how else to describe it. There was no blood, no explosion. It was like he was a glove being pulled inside out in one smooth, sickening, silent motion. 1 second he was a man, and the next he was a grotesque sculpture of exposed sinew and bone, his feet where his head should be. He just collapsed into a heap of what used to be a person. Father Rico turned to the next man, who was frozen in pure, primal terror. Confess. We just watched, horrified and awestruck, as he walked through their ranks, never touching a soul, just speaking quiet commands. He was turning them inside out with nothing but pure, concentrated, terrifying faith. When it was over, he just turned around, gave us a gentle, beatific smile, and walked back the way he came, disappearing over the ridge. We sat there in silence for a full 5 minutes, surrounded by the leftovers. Nobody ever questioned the rumors about Father Rico again. And you better believe mass attendance went way up after that. Lawyers have read it. When did you get so fed up with defending your case that you low-key just lit up the whole courtroom? Alright, sit down, grab a snack, and prepare yourselves for this absolute clown show. I've been practicing criminal defense for a hot minute, but nothing could have prepared me for the day I just straight up snapped. Like, I'm talking to it for the plot kind of snapping. Here's the story. I was defending this CEO called Paul G. This dude was a straight up snake. Like, I'm talking Gordon Ramsay with a MBA. He was accused of embezzling millions from his company, and let me tell you, his whole defense was a joke. There was so much evidence stacked against him, I could have built a house out of receipts, testimonies, and, honestly, some receipts from fast food because even those looked like they had more integrity than my client. But you know I was getting paid, and a lawyer's job is to defend. So, I'm in this big case, national news type of vibe, reporters outside the courthouse, the whole thing. The prosecutor, Mr. Stern? Complete piece of work. I mean, if there was a law school for being an arrogant, smug, know-it-all jerk, he'd have graduated summa cum laude. He was practically drooling for a conviction, and I was sitting there like, I'll play this game, but I knew this man was as guilty as a kid with chocolate on their face and an entire candy store's worth of wrappers stuffed under their bed. The evidence was brutal. Like, Paul was caught on tape, sending wire transfers, and, at one point, the dude literally Googled how to cover up a crime. Bruh, you can't be Googling that stuff still thinking you're getting away with it. But hey, I've got a job to, so I kept at it. Fast forward a bit, day before closing arguments. I get this text from Paul. It says, "If you don't get me off, I'm taking you down with me. I have CCTV footage of the pizza joint incident. You're going down if I go down." The moment I read those words, my heart dropped. How could he know? There's no one in the world who should know what happened that night at Jimmy's Pizzeria. No one who's still alive, at least. So now I'm in a panic, thinking my career's gonna go straight down the drain if this guy goes down. But here's the thing, I knew he was guilty. Like, I knew. And now he's threatening me with things from the past I thought the world had forgotten. It felt like my whole life was about to turn into a B-grade crime thriller. I couldn't sleep that night, my heart was racing too fast. I wasn't ready for it. But the day of the trial came anyway. The trial was going exactly how I thought it would. It wasn't looking good for my client and by extension me. I'm sitting there in the courtroom, looking around, and I swear to you, I start feeling like I'm in the middle of a zombie movie, like, everyone's dead to me. I've already given up. This is all a game at this point. Paul is over there smugly grinning like the Joker, I'm sitting there counting the seconds until I'm disbarred, and then, bam, it hit me. I'm up there, trying to give some dramatic closing statement. But I'm thinking, why am I even pretending to care? These people are either corrupt, stupid, or both. None of them even care about me, my future, or justice for that matter. So I stand up, look over at the jury, and I go, "Listen, I've been lying to you this whole time. My client is guilty, he stole millions. And you know what? I don't even care anymore. I don't care about this case, about your opinions, or about anything anymore. This whole system is a joke. And honestly, I've had enough. I've been forced to defend a stupid criminal that knows nothing about how to properly cover his tracks. It's like I'm set up to fail." Before letting anyone process what just happened, I pulled out two AR-10.308 rifles. Yeah, I said two. Dual-wielding double trouble. I wasn't trying to make it easy for anyone. I look around. The judge looks like he's seen a ghost, the prosecutor's face is frozen in terror, which, honestly, I found a little satisfying, and the jury. They looked like they'd just gotten hit with a full truckload of bricks, and suddenly, everything feels like a game. I start firing. The sound of the shots is deafening, but my brain's on autopilot now, like I'm watching this from some other dimension. Bullet holes started appearing in desks, walls, and eventually people. Everyone is screaming or diving for cover, but it's too late. The whole room is a movie scene. I'm walking up and down the aisle, guns raised like I'm in a shootout in the Wild West, letting the rounds fly. At this point, it's pure chaos. The judge is lifeless under the desk, the prosecutor is caught crawling like a baby trying to get out of the room, and the jury? Man, they must have wished they could crawl through the floorboards. By the time I ran out of ammo and the rifles were useless, the only thing left was silence. Yup. Everyone's dead. Every single person. The bailiffs, the judge, the reporters, the stenographer, everyone's gone. I walked out of there like I was strolling out of a convenience store with a pack of gum. The second I stepped outside, I dropped the rifles and just walked into my escort vehicle to take me to my new life in New Zealand with a new name. It felt like I was clocking out after a long shift. Like, yeah, I just wiped out an entire courtroom, but hey, it is what it is. New life, new me. So yeah, that's the time I lit up a whole courtroom. TLDR, I got so fed up defending a guilty client, so I took it out on everyone in the courtroom with two AR-10 rifles. Was it extreme? Yeah. But I know you'd do the same thing. Edit, thank you for all the support in Reddit Gold, I didn't expect for this to blow up like it did. People keep asking about the Jimmy's Pizzeria incident. So here's the story, a couple years back I was doing this small case for this dude that was caught stealing a pizza delivery truck. The case was a joke, but I take my job seriously. So, I'm working on this, trying to negotiate some minor charges, and I get an invitation to a lawyer networking event at Jimmy's Pizzeria. You know, those events where all the suits show up pretending to network while trying to get free food? Well, things took a turn that night. So, I'm at this pizza event just trying to get some free slices, just like everyone else. Now, I'm usually a chill guy, usually. But late into the night when most people had already left, I saw this one pizza. It was a perfect pizza, the pizza of my dreams. Extra cheese, pepperoni, crispy crust, golden perfection. And then, this guy Bert, some hotshot from a rival law firm, steps up to the table. He picks up the slice I was eyeing like it was his birthright. The audacity. He looks me dead in the eye and says, "Nah, man, I'm taking this one." And that's when the beast inside me woke up. Now, some would maybe argue that I had too many slices already. But that one, that slice? It was my destiny. I wasn't gonna let some corporate clown take it from me. So, I reach over to grab the pizza from his hands and say, "Nah, that's my slice, bro." Bert, being the arrogant prick he was, shoves me back. And for a moment, I thought, alright, I can just walk away. Let him have it. I've got enough food. But I swear I felt my entire bloodline screaming from the afterlife telling me to take back what was destined to be mine. So I doubled down. My adrenaline kicked in. I was throwing and taking punch after punch until Bert finally hits the floor, out cold. I'm standing there, panting like I just ran a marathon. But then, two of his brilliant colleagues come rushing over to defend him. I swear, it was like the backup characters in a video game who have zero skills but just charge in any way. They tried to grab me, but I wasn't having any of it. One of them decides he's gonna try and tackle me. So he charges in, arms wide open like he's trying to hug me or something. But I step aside, and the dude eats the floor faster than a pizza on a Sunday night. The other guy, some skinny dude with a tie too tight for his neck, pulls out a flashlight, like that's gonna help in a fight. He tries to swing it at me, but I'm not exactly in the mood for any of this weak sauce. So, I just grab the flashlight and break it in half like I'm cracking a pencil. At this point, it's clear, I'm not just fighting for pizza, I'm fighting for my life. Now, I'm standing there, when I hear the sound of a click behind me. And I turn to see Bert's last colleague, the ringleader of these clowns, pulling out a full-on 9mm handgun. He's shaking like a leaf, but he's got the gun pointed at me. Oh great, now we're doing this for real? But before I could even think about ducking, this other guy from across the room, who'd been hiding behind the pizza ovens, pulls out his Glock and starts shooting anything and everything. Next thing I know, the place is a full-on Western-style shootout. It was chaos. I swear, this whole thing felt like a cross between a Wild West standoff and a zombie apocalypse. There were guns blazing, pizza flying, and people diving under tables like it was some kind of action movie. I dropped to the floor, perfect pizza still in hand. I barely managed to avoid getting shot when Bert, yes, Bert, somehow still alive, gets up, pulls out a handgun from his pants and starts firing like he's Clint Eastwood in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. The whole place turned into a chaotic firefight with everyone shooting at everything that moved. It was like a madman's dream, but instead of bank robbers, it was corporate lawyers and pizza delivery people. Somehow, amidst all the chaos, I found myself hiding behind the pizza counter with an iron in my hand. I also grabbed a pistol off one of Bert's goons because you know I'd rather dual wield. I start firing back, more out of instinct than anything else. I'm dodging bullets, trying to avoid getting hit by flying mozzarella, and just praying to the heavens I don't get shot. Eventually I hear police sirens in the distance. Everyone is either lying lifeless on the floor or bleeding out, breathing their last breaths. The whole pizzeria is a mess, the walls are shot up, and I'm standing in the middle of what could only be described as a war zone. I picked up the box with the perfect pizza and walked out. The cops arrived a few minutes later. After a brief investigation, they assumed everyone involved in the fight was dead. After all the chaos, they figured it was just another unfortunate workplace accident. By then I was on my couch watching from the news whilst enjoying the most perfect pizza slice I've ever had. That slice made it all worth it. And that's it. That's how I got away with it. No one had the faintest idea that I was the one who started a pizza-fueled shootout. No one knew that the cameras that had been shot still had incriminating evidence that would come back to try and bite me years later. Girls, what is the greenest flag you've seen in a guy? Response 1. My boyfriend volunteers in the pediatric wing of the local hospital on his weekends. He never does it for praise and I only found out because I had to drop something off for him. Seeing this guy, who I know is stressed from his own job, sitting and patiently explaining a video game to a terrified little girl about to go into surgery. It just melted me. It's not about being nice, it's about a deep, quiet kindness and empathy that he doesn't feel the need to advertise. A man who is gentle when no one is watching is a walking green flag. Response 2. Okay, so I went on a first date with this guy, Mark. Total sweetheart. He took me to this cozy little Italian place, remembered a tiny detail I'd mentioned on my profile, and actually laughed at my dumbest jokes. The whole night felt effortless. I was already planning our wedding, you know how it is. We're walking back to my car, taking a shortcut through a quiet, warehouse-lined street, when it happens. A dozen motorcycles roar to life, headlights pinning us like stage lights. They form a circle around us. The gutter vultures, according to their greasy vests. The leader, a man whose beard probably had its own ecosystem, gets off his bike and sneers, well, look what we have here. I froze. My life literally flashed before my eyes. But Mark? He just sighed, like he'd spilled a little coffee on his shirt. He turns to me and says, close your eyes if you're squeamish. Before I could even process that, he moved. It wasn't a run, it was a blur. He shot past the leader, and there was a sickening pop thwomp sound, like a watermelon being unplugged. When my eyes refocused, Mark was standing there holding the lead biker's entire arm, the one with the chain wrapped around the fist. He gave it a test swing. The bikers stared in stunned silence for a second before letting out a collective roar and charging. And that's when things went from a mugging to a Looney Tunes episode directed by a sadist. Mark used the armed nunchaku to shatter the teeth of the first two guys. Another biker threw a knife, Mark caught it between his teeth, gave a little ting with his fingernail, and used the reflection to blind another guy before throwing it back, pinning the man's leather vest to a telephone pole. The bikers got creative. One of them ripped a no parking sign out of the concrete and swung it at him. Mark just did a perfect backflip, landed on the sign mid-swing, rode it like a skateboard down the guy's back, and kicked him into a dumpster. It was pure, unadulterated chaos. At one point, a biker with a prosthetic leg charged him. Mark just pressed a button on the guy's knee, the leg popped off, and he proceeded to beat the rest of the gang with it like it was a foam bat. The final guy, in a last-ditch effort, revved his motorcycle and tried to run him over. Mark just stood his ground, grabbed the front wheel as it hit him, and German suplexed the entire motorcycle, rider and all. When the dust settled, there was just a pile of groaning, dismembered, and frankly confused bikers. Mark walked back over to me, tossing the prosthetic leg aside. He had a little splash of motor oil on his cheek. He wiped it off, his breathing not even heavy, and offered me his hand. "Sorry about that," he said, his voice back to its normal, gentle tone. "You were saying something about your cat?" And I swear to God, I have never been more turned on in my entire life. Forget a man who can cook. Give me a man who can dismantle a biker gang with their own limbs and still be ready to talk about my fluffy tabby. Response 3. We were at a fancy restaurant when our waiter, who was visibly nervous, accidentally spilled an entire tureen of lobster bisque down my date's brand new shirt. He didn't even flinch. He just smiled, helped the poor guy up, and insisted on helping him clean the mess. A guy who treats service staff well is great, but a guy who can forgive a night-ruining mistake is a keeper for life. Response 4. We had to go to the DMV to get his license renewed, and I was prepared for a full day of misery. But instead of getting angry at the 5-hour wait, he just started talking to the lady behind the counter. His voice was so calm and his logic so flawless that the queue started moving backwards as people, realizing the futility of their own existence, simply went home. The now serving sign just exploded in a shower of sparks, and the employees, weeping with gratitude, handed him a lifetime license and the keys to the building. Weaponized, reality-bending patience is the biggest green flag there is. Response 5. I knew he was a keeper when we were walking in the park and a squirrel, completely unprompted, ran up his leg and handed him a perfect, uncracked walnut as an offering. He just nodded solemnly, as if accepting tribute. Then, a flock of pigeons landed on his shoulders and started cooing in what sounded suspiciously like a 3-part harmony. A man who is not just good with animals but is clearly their chosen king, destined to lead them in the great interspecies war? That's a green flag you can't ignore. Have you ever seen a lawyer win a case before it even started? Yes, me. I'm a decent lawyer. I know my way around a courtroom, I can write a motion that'll make a junior associate weep, and I look pretty good in a suit. But this case was a certified nightmare. My client, a tech CEO with the moral compass of a hungry shark, was caught so red-handed he had marinara sauce up to his elbows. The evidence wasn't just a smoking gun, it was a signed confession written on the side of a ballistic missile aimed at an orphanage. And then I saw the name on the opposition's letterhead, Miles Wright. Miles Wright wasn't just a lawyer, he was a legal singularity. He was a myth. They say he once cross-examined a potted plant until it confessed to perjury. He could get a guilty man elected to sainthood. He argued a case so eloquently that the court stenographer's machine started printing out poetry. Going up against Miles Wright wasn't a lawsuit, it was a scheduled execution. I spent the next 3 weeks doing what lawyers do. I lived in a cave made of discovery documents, fueled by stale coffee and existential dread. I looked for loopholes, precedents, technicalities. Nothing. The case was hermetically sealed. Any argument I could possibly make, Miles would not only counter, he would dismantle it on a subatomic level, then use the remaining particles to spell out my client's guilt in flaming letters across the sky. It was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday when the epiphany hit me. I was staring at a photo of Miles Wright, smug, perfect hair, eyes that could see into your soul and bill you for the privilege. And I realized I was approaching the problem all wrong. The problem wasn't the evidence. The problem wasn't my scumbag client. The problem wasn't the law. The problem was Miles Wright. He was the insurmountable obstacle. The case wasn't a legal battle, it was a logistical one. And the objective was simple: remove the obstacle. My legal research stopped, and a different kind of research began. I learned Miles Wright's routine. His morning coffee, single origin Ethiopian, pour over, his afternoon squash game, his secret passion for collecting antique astrolabes. I created a shell corporation, fabricated a convoluted international patent dispute, and baited the hook with a rare, 16th century celestial globe that was supposedly key to the case. He couldn't resist. We met in a rented warehouse in the industrial district, a location I chose for its privacy and discretion. He walked in, briefcase in hand, looking like he was about to win a Nobel Prize. He didn't even notice the freshly laid plastic sheeting on the floor. A fascinating case, he began, his voice like honey-coated velvet. The jurisdictional complexities alone are... Miles, I interrupted, my voice calm. There is no case. He paused, a flicker of confusion crossing his perfect face for the first time. I don't understand. It's simple, I explained, pulling a cattle prod from behind a stack of crates. My legal strategy has shifted from litigation to risk mitigation. And you, Miles, are the primary risk. I won't bore you with the details. It was clean, efficient, and involved a significant amount of concrete and the foundation of a new high-rise parking garage downtown. He became a permanent part of the city's infrastructure. An unsung pillar of the community, you might say. The day of the trial arrived. I walked into the courtroom, feeling rested and confident for the first time in months. The opposing counsel's table was empty, save for a frantic, sweating junior partner who was stammering about how Mr. Wright had inexplicably vanished. The judge, looking impatient, turned to me. Well, counsel? Seeing as the opposition seems to be absent, do you have a preliminary motion? I stood up and straightened my tie. Yes, Your Honor, I said, a faint smile on my face. I moved to dismiss. My client was off the hook just like that. TLDR, I was set to face the greatest lawyer in the world. Realizing I couldn't beat him in court, I made sure he never made it to the courthouse. Or anywhere else, ever again.